Well, today we're going to talk about homeschooling, and we have a special guest, Robin Bayer. Robin's been homeschooling her twins for 12 years, and they're now 18, and we'll learn a little bit about your experience and some of the options that other homeschooling families have. Robin, tell us, first of all, when you decided to homeschool Jen and Hillary, what was your expectation, and what's been the reality over time?
That's a good question. I think I was without conscious expectation. It was a very quick decision because we were in public school and then we were thrown out of public school, so we needed to make a quick choice. And I think it was more, let's just see how we do. And I think I've been very pleasantly surprised how much the girls have thrived and learned in this environment and how enjoyable it's been for all of us. And, a very positive experience.
Yeah. What are some of the strengths that you see in terms of homeschooling that you've discovered over the years? What are the benefits that have emerged?
I think the girls have learned to be much more self-directed, to think about what they want to learn and why, rather than always being told, responding to what they've been told to do. And so it helps them develop an analysis for a living, because they're responsible for what do I care about, what do I want to learn about, rather than just kind of, like accept being passive in your education. It's being responsible.
And some of their interests are like music, correct?
Yes.
And some science as well. What other topics are they particularly engaged in?
Well, they want to, they've been wanting to develop what we call a conciliate scientific worldview, because, we're all born into some particular culture, and we have assumptions about what it means to live well. We have all sorts of assumptions just by accident of birth. And so what they are hoping to do is grow beyond that and question and be able to integrate information from all different disciplines, but all information that's based on its testability and accountability in the world, not just that that's just taken for granted. And so that's why we call it scientific.
Yeah, it's a real inquiry.
And,
as
inquiry
to why
based.
You believe what you believe, or why you
like what's your basis for it? What's your analysis? And you can see that we have a set of behaviors that enable us to test whether information's scientific or not. That includes questioning, and then we look for a repeating pattern, and we see, and then we test it. But the whole purpose is it a basis for accurate prediction. And so they can ask, they can look at the world and ask, what information do I want to study? Why? And is it something that's sound, that's going to result in accurate prediction? So if I want to further common good and I do something, is it going to get the results I want? And how do I know?
Right,
What is my bigger analysis? And so that's kind of the larger framework in which they're working. But then it translates down into, of course, they're studying, the sciences and mathematics and music and drawing and foreign language and writing, those things.
One thing that I have to comment on is that you're a Palo Alto resident, Palo Alto residents, and so many people moved to Palo Alto for the public school system.
Yes.
And so they think that anything other than going through the Palo Alto school system is lesser, maybe. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you've kind of come to terms with some of those perceptions of what you're doing versus shouldn't they be in public school?
How do I come to terms with those perceptions? Well, I ask myself a lot of questions, because it's hard when the world around you is saying, why are you doing this? So when you do something different, you have to explain it a lot more often. So you either are making justification in a positive way, where you're standing for something and making meaning in your life, or you're justifying in a way that you're just rationalizing and your own neuroses. So to somehow distinguish, well, when am I standing and justifying in what I call a positive way, and that's the constant balance. And so I like to look at how the girls are doing, think about how they're learning. Are they healthy children? Are they growing in ways? Are they functional in the world? Are they going to live? Are they prepared to live good lives where they can stay healthy, contribute to common good, and feel fulfilled? You know, are they moving towards that? And I don't have the parallel universe, but for the most part, I'm very pleased with. They're kind, good-hearted, nice people. And what more can you ask for?
I'm curious how just the resources have evolved over the years since you've been doing this for so long, and sort of what was out there and available at the very beginning, and then what, I mean, obviously that also changes with as they've gotten older, what they need in terms of outside resources. But how has that whole landscape changed for homeschooling?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back. It's hard to compare. It seems to have gone by so quickly.
Yeah.
Like whether it's more common, it seems like there is so much online available, and that's just getting more and more with all the online anything. You can learn anything online. And there's also a lot of online available that's free of charge.
Yes.
And I think it's a big challenge to kind of sift through that and see what's sound and good. So I think that's grown.
What about
for the resources?
I'm sorry. What about the school district? Have they offered more support services, or how supportive have they been along the way?
Well, in the very beginning, there was some part of the school code that I remember because we were exploring options for how to do homeschooling, and that you're accountable to the district but you learn at home. There's some way you can do that, but like they assign you a
They do have an
teacher,
independent study program, but it's not really for homeschooling. It's more like if you're ill or something.
Yeah, it didn't fit our needs at all. I remember seeing that. And then once I felt like we didn't fit in any of their niches that they offered, I haven't really pursued any. So we did one thing with them, though. Palo Alto High School did offer to let the girls take the PSAT at their school when they offered it to their kids, which was a really nice thing to do, because the PSAT is not offered. You have to be. It's not offered like you can just sign up for it like the SAT is. So they let us join in the day they were offering it to their.
Yeah, I mean the school district is interesting. And I'm not sure how unusual it is or not. There are a lot of other local examples of districts that do offer some kind of actual program for homeschoolers, and where they provide academic support, even a teacher who sort of oversees your work, sort of like Ocean Grove, the charter school that you guys use, but you're still connected to your district in some way, which I imagine is comforting for some families. And I did speak to one mother who didn't end up in the story, who said she for many years had sort of wished that the Palo Alto School District had something like that, and then you would also, your child could, if they wanted to, go to after-school sports or clubs or something like that, that would just be more of a partnership instead of stepping outside of your local
I would rather that I think it would be great if something like Ocean Grove existed in our district, because Ocean Grove is in I think Santa Cruz County.
And so they're a public charter school that families can enroll in to sort of have that. I mean, they provide the sort of the regulation that you need.
Right, they do all the reporting to the state, so you don't have to worry about declaring yourself as a homeschool.
Yeah. And did you know about Ocean Grove from the very beginning, or was that something that you sort of stumbled upon?
A friend told me about it once we knew we were leaving public school, and we needed to find an option right away, according to the district attorney.
Yeah. You also mentioned that a lot of online courses are free, and that sort of caused me to think about the financial aspect of this, which I couldn't really get into in the story. Homeschooling could clearly become expensive very quickly if you're going to, you find all these great tutors and programs. Is that something that you've struggled with, or can you just address it?
Actually, it's been remarkably cheap for us, but I live in a really unique context because I have so many teaching resources available within the community I live. So the school, Ocean Grove, provided a stipend for each girl, and we were able to use that for the few books that we bought. But you can get books at a library, and nowadays you can get textbooks used so cheap on Amazon. And we also used it for music lessons, primarily for music lessons at CSMA, Community School of Music and Arts, and also for Spanish tutoring. And then all the other instruction we provided ourselves, and
So that wasn't a barrier.
it wasn't a barrier at all.
Have you had
We
any-
haven't had any. I mean, we sometimes struggle to figure out what to spend our Ocean Grove money on. We got to buy something, but we're not big spenders.
What kinds of-
because it doesn't roll over, so you got to spend your funds.
Each year.
It's a bad problem.
Use it up.
What types of roadblocks have you had to navigate along the way?
I think a lot of it is that the self-doubt, the questioning is, are they going to be better off? And also to be able to stay calm when they want to go more slowly, when you think their peers are all already taken this exam or already finished learning this, to be able to take a breath and let them take their time, and to figure out the balance between how much accountability you want to ask for and how much to let them find their own way.
How do you make those decisions? Because I imagine they're numerous, and you keep
Yeah.
making the decisions.
And you also want it to be a carrot rather than stick.
Right.
Like they want to learn because the whole idea is they're learning because they care about learning and they have a purpose in learning and they want to go out there and learn it because that's what's going to stick anyway.
Yeah.
Unless they're just going through the motions. But I think I had the partnership of 4 other adults who were interested in the children's education, and we would talk about how they were doing and how we might inspire them better or where they were slacking and how we might encourage them in that area, or what other strategy we might try to motivate them or inspire them, or change technique. Do we need to change book, course, computer learning versus tutor versus, we just experimented. It's always changing.
I imagine it was an education for you to
Oh, yeah.
be able to educate your children.
Yeah, it's been very rewarding, very fun.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I feel really proud about is that how many mothers can say they tutored their teenagers in science and math and survived as friends after the process, and they did well, and I had fun, and I mean that's a real accomplishment.
A lot of parents I spoke to have younger children, and they expressed some sort of trepidation about, even though it was years away, the
Yeah.
point of going to high school and that being sort of a gateway to college,
Yeah.
and being really worried about, just since there are so many requirements associated with college applications, what would that even mean as a homeschooler? And since I know Jen and Hillary are not quite there yet, they're taking their time, which I think is great. But what is it like sort of looking at colleges and considering what that will mean for them in terms of applying?
Yeah, well, one thing, just having them read the requirements and look at them has been motivating. They want to see a different environment. I think they're interested in some sense of exploring a different context and seeing what that's like. So that's one positive thing. And another thing is there's many schools that are quite flexible in accepting homeschoolers, and they let you, you mentioned Stanford in your article, they let you talk about why you homeschooled and what your approach was and how you went about learning and what you learned, which is perfect for the girls because they have plenty to say on that topic, and they can demonstrate how they learned, what they learned, and why they learned it. And I think that's a real positive thing to be able to articulate about your own your own learning.
Yeah, and it struck me how you said, so they're going to create their own transcripts that really capture their work. And I had just written this story about this national consortium that wants to reinvent the high school transcript to be exactly like that, where it's more of sort of it captures the work that you've done, and it's more about reflecting and reviewing on your work with a teacher or on your own, and sort of. So I was struck that like they're doing something that this national group is working to implement at high schools across the country.
Yeah, that's something that reflects them as people.
Right, exactly. You're not just sort of grades on a paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elena, now you talked to some parents who have taken advantage of homeschool organizations, like groups that actually provide specific services. I think you mentioned Wild Child a couple times. Can you tell me what's emerged out there specifically for homeschooling
There's
families?
a huge amount out there, and I'm not sure. I think a lot of them have been around for a long time. But yeah, like Wild Child is an outdoor nature program where they either go to a park or they go for a hike, and it's sort of a 6-hour whole day thing. But they're also learning about biology and science and sort of different things as you're out in nature. There are all these, I mean, like the Monterey Bay Aquarium or things in San Francisco or museums all have either, I mean, there are specific homeschooling programs and things that just you can take advantage of as a learning opportunity, and that's some kind of program for kids. So it's sort of like the sky is the limit for a lot of parents. You just have to find what you're interested in, what's right for your child.
Yeah.
And it does take a lot of work. I mean, it's easier to read this story and think, well, this sounds great. You just, go home with your kid and that they are happier, healthy learners. But it takes a lot of effort, I think, to organize it and pick and choose what's right. And I think sometimes programs might not work out. And that parents said that too. You might get a math textbook and it's really not right for your child. But then you have the freedom also to set that aside and move on to something new, which you wouldn't within the traditional school system.
Yeah, I know it's a very old school notion, but the phrase homeschooling really does kind of suggest that you're there, your kids are there, you're having them study at home because homeschool. But I mean, it sounds like between the online courses, I guess one of your children at least has taken an online class with Harvard, and you're talking about groups that go out into nature, and it seems like there are a lot of options now that go way beyond the kind of basic idea of what homeschooling is.
Yeah.
Especially with the technology. I mean, technology sort of infiltrates everything
the
these
internet,
days, right?
the whole world's open to them. It's so different from
Yeah.
before.
It kind of makes you wonder what your life would have been like if you had been homeschooled. So there are other parents, like I said, in your story. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how the story emerged in the first place? Like, how did you get the idea, and then any roadblocks that you encountered in reporting?
Sure, yeah. So a Palo Alto homeschooling mother approached me actually in June. I was just explaining this before we started. When every year we publish lists of high school graduates from traditional high schools, and she called me up and said, there are lots of homeschoolers in the area, and why aren't their names on these lists?
Capturing them, yeah.
So that really sparked my interest, and I talked to her more about it, and she connected me with other families, and it actually, so now it's December, that was a long time ago. It took all this time, I mean, there's things in between that I was working on, but it took a while in the very beginning to find families who are willing to speak on the record with them and their children's names, and I think some of that might just be personal decisions. I get that from a lot of different stories, but also,
Private situation.
Sure, like just a sense that they had found something and they were doing it on their own, and although they wanted more people to understand why and what homeschooling looked like, also this reluctance to sort of be the ones to put themselves out there in a way, and that was really interesting. So it actually took a long time to find Palo Alto specific families who were willing to use their names for the story.
Did you think that they felt maybe they would be open to criticism?
I think so. I think, you mentioned sort of the misperceptions, and other parents mentioned there's sort of almost a stigma attached to it still, even though more people are doing it. So I think that was one concern.
How many people are doing it in the Palo Alto area? Like, do you have a good idea, or?
It's really hard to know because there's it's not like they're being tracked in one single way. I mean, I got the number from Ocean Grove, the number of families who are enrolled there, but there are also families here who have formed their own private schools on their own, so that's a whole other number of people. There are other charter schools that they can file with, so it's really hard to nail down, but my sense is there's a good number, I think more than you would think here.
I was taking the percentage nationally and kind of applying that to Palo Alto. It seems like it's in the hundreds, but not in the thousands.
Yeah.
And neither is it in the dozens.
Yeah.
It's kind of in there, do you associate with other homeschool families? Are you in connection with them as you've raised your children?
Not very much. Just I think because our situation is so unique, and I live in the community, they have plenty of interaction with all different people from all over the world. So less needed to partner with other homeschooling families for that.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, I don't know if you think kind of philosophically or politically about homeschooling, but I was reading an opinion that Elena forwarded me, and the idea of homeschooling is perhaps being able to turn public education on its ear is something that I was thinking about. Is this a solution for families, that could change either the emphasis that we place in our nation on public education? Is it something that could actually become a more broader access, kind of viable solution for people? I don't know if you've thought about, you know, the bigger picture or the national application of homeschooling.
So you're asking whether I think a solution for people who are dissatisfied, you mean, with the current public school system?
Yeah,
or a
looking at,
solution in
looking at the
which
school
way?
system, knowing that some
There's
people are not
critique.
getting a very good education
Yeah.
in our country.
And also the school system prepares us to fit into the system, and our system is creating the world we live in today. So if we look out there and we have questions about the world we're creating,
Yeah.
then we have to look at the roots out of which we're creating it. And if we go down to the roots, it's our ideas and our information primarily is what we're generating that out of. So I think as a solution, there's radical shifts in how we educate, I think, are necessary. And I think college is a part of that, to tell you honestly. How much is the lecture in the college format with the online resources? And,
Oh, yeah.
what's that going to look like in the next, how is that going to evolve? And I think with the public school at the lower levels, I wonder, I think there was a movement, I'm not sure if it's still going on, about charter schools. A lot more charter schools were with specialized learning focuses were, I think, one alternative. And I think homeschooling will grow. And I like the idea that this educational funding, the funds available for are in the hands of the parents, so they can make choices about how they think those resources can be best used for the child to thrive and grow and learn what they need to learn to contribute.
Yeah. Elena, do you have any takeaways from reporting on this story of about homeschooling, or how it's fitting within, the system? Or
I just thought it was so striking, as someone who reports very closely in the public school district, so many of the issues there that parents care about, from stress and worrying about homework levels and also sort of different definitions of success and wanting to promote that. Homeschooling is kind of living that, and it's not for everyone, and it's not easy to do, but I think it shows how there are different ways to do it, and you can sort of be free from a lot of those things that are really hard to deal with in traditional school.
All right, well, I think that wraps it up for today. Robin Bayer, thank you so much for being here, for talking about homeschooling and sharing with us what your experience has been so that we can understand a little bit better. So appreciate your time.
Thanks for inviting me.
That's it for Behind the Headlines for this week. If you would like to subscribe, you can hit the link below. We're on paloaltoonline.com, so catch up with Palo Alto news there. And we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next week.